I am Michelle Mcpherson, and this is the Michelle Mcpherson Show, the only internet marketing podcast dedicated to answering your burning business questions. Find us and submit your own questions at FromIdeaToEmpire.com. And now for today's episode.
Hi Michelle, really like your blog on your site. I like the way you've got the video with then the audio and the transcription beneath it. And I was just wondering which tools you use to do this and what your workflow was, please, because I'd really love to do this for my personal training site. My name's John. Thanks very much.
Hey John, thanks for your question. And so what I'm going to do is just share with you my exact task template for what we do when we have a new podcast episode to publish. And from there, I'll go through each kind of line item and I'll explain the tools that we're using, why we use those, and what each step is. So if you're listening to the audio of this, it's a good idea to head on over to michellemcpherson.com and get the show notes for this episode so that you can see the task list and get the details from there. So first thing is edit podcast video and upload to Auphonic. Auphonic? Wow. I didn't know that I didn't know how to say that until I tried to say that. So basically what we do is we edit the video, we top and tail it with the intro and watermark and that kind of stuff. And then we upload it to Auphonic, which will then automatically take the podcast, it'll edit the levels, and then it will distribute it to YouTube, to Amazon S3, and to Soundcloud. So this can also be outsourced, and we often do that as well. So it will go to somebody who knows exactly what to do. They've done it before, so they don't need to receive individual instructions. Now at Auphonic, the reason that we have it go to those three places, YouTube, SoundCloud, and Amazon S3. YouTube is because oftentimes we do a video podcast. YouTube is a wonderful source of traffic. It's actually the number 2 search engine in the world. So it's silly to ignore it if you have content that can be put up there. So we have everything automatically feed to YouTube for that reason. It goes to Amazon S3 because that is where our podcast actually streams from. So if you are subscribed to this podcast in iTunes, I hope you are, the file that you are listening to comes from Amazon S3. It's much faster than hosting it on your own server. You don't use up all your bandwidth, all that kind of stuff for podcast downloads. So that's the smart thing to do there. Now, the alternative is actually using SoundCloud, and we're just starting to experiment with that. SoundCloud has a built-in audience of its own, much like YouTube, although much smaller. And I'm not sure if it's going to be something that we carry on with or not, but right now, it makes sense to publish our podcast onto SoundCloud since it can be done automatically anyway, right? That's just syndication 101. But we may actually host the podcast at SoundCloud at some point in the future if we find that it's beneficial to do so after experimenting with it some more. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, create a video thumbnail, including title from a PSD thumbnail template. So we have a template of what the still screen for all of our podcasts will look like. Usually it's, like if it's a video one, then it'll be my face, hopefully smiling, not making a strange face. And then the title of what that episode is. And so we've just got a template for that needs to be created. And then that ends up being used on YouTube, on SoundCloud, on Instagram, on Facebook, all of those different places where a visual representation of what we're doing produces a better result. And so that's step 2. Step 3, create a draft WordPress post for the podcast from the Michelle Mcpherson podcast template. So there is a post within my WordPress installation called Michelle Mcpherson podcast template. We copy it, paste it into a new post, and from there we're able to follow the same template every time so that everything looks consistent and good. Next thing, outsourced, we transcribe the podcast, and then someone in-house edits the transcription for grammar, spelling, punctuation, paragraphs, etc., just to make sure that the transcription is legit and is the way that we want it. We do always double check those so that we appear as smart as we actually are. Next step, edit transcription, add to WordPress draft post, schedule it to publish. So within this step, we're taking that transcription, we're adding it to WordPress, we're going to tag our post, we're going to title our post, we're going to set the featured image. That's that image that we created in step 2. We're going to add the URL to the Amazon S3 podcast MP3 file to that WordPress post. We're going to add the YouTube video embed code to that post so that the video appears as well. Those particular functions, streaming the podcast and whatnot, are done with the Blueberry WordPress plugin. And so that's how we're running that from there. And this step is kind of like dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's for that. Next, edit YouTube video settings. The edit YouTube video settings step is just making sure that the video is properly tagged, has a proper description, those kinds of things. Same thing with the next step, edit SoundCloud upload. Again, just making sure that it's properly tagged. Most of the settings that are really important actually transfer from Auphonic directly to YouTube and SoundCloud, but we do log in and double check things just to make sure that everything is exactly the way that it needs to be to best represent the business. Next step, schedule an Aweber email to notify subscribers that there is a new video. That's pretty self-explanatory. We just want our subscribers to know that there's some new information out there, and so we get an email out to them indicating same. Schedule next episode publication date. I added this in as a reminder that creating one piece of content, you're not done, right? So this is actually one that is assigned to me and that reminds me, hey, we've got a thing out. We need to get more out because this is a continual process. Next step, schedule social media posts announcing the new episode. So we need to send out a reminder on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Google Plus saying, hey, we've got a new podcast episode out. You should come and listen to it. Next step, is the topic appropriate for social media daily? If so, add video post there as well. Now, since we have a done-for-you social media service, if I am doing a blog post that or a podcast episode that is about social media and that it makes sense for people interested in that service to learn more about social media or how we do social media or best practices, that kind of thing, we will publish that over there too. Now, before I get the duplicate content warning monkeys on my back, what we do is we publish the video itself. We don't publish the audio, so it isn't like a podcast over there. And then we don't publish the transcription. So we aren't syndicating our own content and duplicating our own content. Not that it's much of a concern these days anyway, but we do keep it separate and different because that is a best practice overall. Next is edit the Michelle Mcpherson blog update spreadsheet with the appropriate link and caption. So we have social updates that go out on the social media services on a regular timeline. Whether or not I am sitting there that day creating new content, something needs to go out and say hello to the audience, right? So that all comes from a spreadsheet that has a link to all of the content that we've created and a caption for each one of those. Those then get loaded into Buffer periodically, and then Buffer sends them out to the audience. So this is just a way to make sure that the posts that we create get promoted, of course, when they go live the first time, but then that they are added to the continual promotion, I guess, machine, you could call it, so that they continue to produce interest and results as time goes on, because a lot of what we do is evergreen and does qualify as something that people could see again and again and again, or that new people could be exposed to and still get use from. So I hope that that gives you lots and lots and lots of ideas, John. This is all set up in teamwork.com. And it's a task template. So every time there is a new podcast, we just duplicate this task template and everything is plugged in for us. And it actually does it with the correct due dates too. It can be assigned automatically to certain team members, that kind of thing. So it works really well for us in automating this procedure and making sure that nothing is forgotten because there are so many steps and so many details along the way. If you've got a follow-up question, feel free to ask it. Hit the Got a Question button at michellemcpherson.com. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.